The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a scream in the darkness. On the bridge of the Zelthian research vessel Harmony of Stars, Captain Vextius' forearms trembled as he watched the tactical display. Red dots swarmed across the screen like angry insects, each one representing a ship of the Krovar Collective, the most ruthless raiders in this sector of the galaxy. "Captain, we have 37 enemy vessels closing on our position," reported his navigation officer, her delicate crystalline features reflecting the emergency lighting. "Our escorts have been destroyed. We have perhaps 6 minutes before they reach weapons range." Vextius people, the Zelthians, had spent 3,000 years building a peaceful civilization. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers. Their ships carried no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. The concept of warfare had been purged from their society generations ago. Now, watching the approaching death fleet, he understood the terrible price of such idealism. "Have you sent the distress signal?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "Yes, Captain. Broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. But the nearest Galactic Council patrol is 16 hours away." The communications officer's voice cracked with desperation. "Nobody else is close enough to wait." The officer's antennae twitched as she focused on her console. "I'm receiving a response. Unknown frequency, but it's coming from the edge of the system. Who could be out there?" Vextai demanded. No civilization had colonies in this remote region. The nearest inhabited worlds were days away. "Unknown, sir. The signal is heavily encrypted, but they're asking for tactical data. They want to know the exact number and classification of enemy vessels." Vextai hesitated. Sharing military intelligence with an unknown contact violated every protocol. But with death approaching in the form of Krovar raiders, protocol seemed less important than survival. "Send them everything we have," he ordered. "Ship counts, weapons capabilities, formation data, all of it." The response came back within seconds, decoded into perfect galactic standard. "Understood. Maintain current position. Do not attempt to flee. Assistance is en route." Before Vextai could ask what kind of assistance could possibly reach them in time, space itself seemed to tear open. The humans emerged from hyperspace like predators stepping from shadows. 12 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls so dark they seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. These weren't the elegant curves and flowing designs favored by most civilizations. These were brutal, angular constructs that looked like they had been forged in the heart of a star and tempered in the void. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that came from years of combat experience. No unnecessary chatter, no panic, no hesitation. "Tactical assessment, Commander Rodriguez," she said quietly. 37 Krovar raiders, Captain. Standard pirate configuration, fast attack corvettes and medium destroyers. They're armed with plasma cannons and boarding torpedoes. Minimal shielding. Rodriguez paused, studying the data streaming across his console. "They're moving in a classic Volfpack formation, trying to encircle the civilian vessel. And our fleet composition? 12 ships, Captain. 4 heavy destroyers, 6 escort frigates, and 2 assault cruisers. We have them outnumbered in both tonnage and firepower." Chun nodded slowly. The Krovar Collective had built their reputation on preying on defenseless civilians and unarmed merchant vessels. They weren't prepared for a real fight. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "the civilian vessel is trying to hail us. They're requesting we identify ourselves." "Put them through," Chun ordered. Captain Vextius' image appeared on the main screen, his alien features tight with confusion. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Vextai of the Zelthian research ship Harmony of Stars. We are grateful for your response to our distress call, but I must know, who are you? What fleet do you represent?" Chun stepped forward, her expression cold and professional. "Captain Vextai, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress signal and are here to render assistance." The alien captain's 4 eyes widened in shock. Earth fleet? But humans are from a restricted world. Your species is classified as a Deathworld civilization. You're not supposed to have vessels this far from your home system. Captain, Chun said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I suggest you move your vessel to minimum safe distance and prepare to witness how Deathworlders handle pirates. On his bridge, Vextai felt a chill run through his body. He had heard the stories, of course. Every spacefaring civilization had. Earth was a Class 12 Deathworld, a planet so hostile that most species would die within minutes of setting foot on its surface. The gravity alone would crush the bones of most civilized races. The weather patterns included storms that could level cities, and the native wildlife included predators that could hunt and kill almost anything, but the humans who had somehow evolved on that nightmare world had been restricted to their home system by mutual agreement of the Galactic Council. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent for civilized space. Yet here they were. Sir, his communications officer whispered. The human vessel is broadcasting to the Krovar fleet. Put it on speakers, Vextai ordered. Captain Chun's voice filled the bridge, calm and conversational. Krovar vessels, this is Captain Chun of the United Earth Fleet. You have been identified as hostile forces engaged in an unprovoked attack on a civilian research vessel. You have exactly 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender, or we will destroy you. The response from the Krovar fleet came in the form of harsh laughter and crude insults in the guttural Krovar language. One of the raider captains finally responded in broken galactic standard, "Stupid humans. You think 12 ships can fight 37? We will add your bones to our trophy collections." Chun didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned to her tactical officer. "Mr. Rodriguez, the pirates have declined our generous offer of surrender." "Confirmed, Captain. Krovar vessels are continuing their approach. They'll be in weapons range in 90 seconds. "Very well. All ships, this is retribution. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Target priority is any vessel that attempts to approach the civilian ship. Secondary targets are command vessels and heavy units. Remember, these pirates have been terrorizing this sector for months. Show them why civilized beings fear Deathworlders." Across the human fleet, weapon systems that had been dormant suddenly came to life. Missile tubes opened like the mouths of hungry beasts. Railguns extended from hidden mountings. Energy weapons swiveled to acquire targets. The Krovar raiders, confident in their numerical superiority, maintained their aggressive approach. They had raided dozens of systems, destroyed hundreds of ships, and enslaved thousands of innocents. A mere 12 vessels, even if they were from the mysterious human Deathworld, couldn't possibly stand against their battle-tested fleet. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first human salvo came without warning. Missiles streaked across space faster than most civilian sensors could track. They struck the leading Krovar vessels with devastating precision. Their warheads designed not just to penetrate shields and armor, but to maximize internal damage. 3 Krovar corvettes simply vanished in expanding spheres of plasma and debris. 2 more reeled away from the formation, their hulls split open in atmosphere venting into space. "Impossible," the Krovar fleet commander snarled over the communication channel. "No weapons are that accurate at this range." Captain Chin's response was to order the second wave of attacks. This time, the human ships demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of Deathworld technology. Railguns fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, punching through Krovar shields like they were soap bubbles. Energy weapons, far more advanced than anything the raiders had ever encountered, sliced through armor plating with surgical precision. But it wasn't just the technology that made the humans so deadly. It was their tactical coordination. The 12 Earth ships moved like a single organism, each vessel supporting its companions while maintaining perfect firing solutions on their targets. They had clearly done this before many times. Within 5 minutes of combat, the Krovar formation was in complete disarray. Half their ships were destroyed or crippled. The remainder were trying desperately to retreat, but the human vessels had positioned themselves to cut off all escape routes on the Zelthian research ship. Captain Vextai watched the battle with growing horror. He had expected the humans to fight bravely, perhaps even successfully. But this wasn't a fight, this was an execution. "Captain," his tactical officer whispered, "the human vessels are targeting the Krovar escape pods." Vextai's blood turned to ice. In civilized warfare, escape pods were sacrosanct. Even the most vicious raiders would allow crews to abandon ships safely. It was one of the most fundamental laws of space combat. But the humans weren't following civilized rules of warfare. They were following the rules of the Deathworld from which they came, rules that said predators didn't deserve mercy. The last Krovar vessel died 17 minutes after the battle began. Captain Chun stood on. Captain Vextai had never set foot aboard a human vessel before. As the transport shuttle carried him through the docking bay of the UES Retribution, he tried to process what he was seeing. The bay itself was enormous, easily 3 times the size of anything on a Zelthian ship. But more unsettling was its dual-purpose design. He could see weapon emplacements that could turn the docking bay into a killing field if enemies tried to board. The humans who escorted him were equally disturbing. They moved with predatory grace, their eyes constantly scanning for threats that didn't exist. Each one carried personal weapons that looked more advanced than anything his people had ever created. Even their uniforms seemed designed for combat rather than ceremony. "Captain Chun will see you in Conference Room Alpha," announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez, his escort. She was smaller than most humans Vextai had encountered in diplomatic files, but something about her made his survival instincts scream warnings. "She's looking forward to meeting you." The corridors of the human ship told their own story. Everything was reinforced, redundant, and built to survive damage. There were blast doors every 50 meters, emergency stations with weapons and breathing apparatus, and combat robots standing in alcoves like metallic sentries. "Your ship seems very militarized," Vextai observed carefully. Martinez glanced at him with what might have been amusement. "Sir, this is a research vessel." Vextai felt his foreheart skip a beat. "Research vessel?" "Yes, sir. We're part of the Deep Space Exploration Initiative. We've been out here for 6 months studying stellar phenomena and mapping unknown systems." She paused at an intersection to check her navigation display. "Though we do carry appropriate defensive capabilities, space can be dangerous. If this was what humans considered a research vessel, Vextai couldn't imagine what their actual warships looked like." Conference Room Alpha was spartanly functional, with a large display screen showing tactical data from the recent battle. Captain Chin rose from her seat as they entered, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Captain Vextai, welcome aboard. I hope your crew is recovering from their ordeal." Vextai carefully grasped her hand with one of his own, noting the surprising strength in her grip. "Thank you, Captain Chun. Your intervention saved many lives. However, I must ask, what are humans doing so far from Earth? The Galactic Council's agreement specifically restricts your species to your home system." Chun gestured for him to sit, then poured 2 cups of what smelled like Earth coffee. That agreement was made 47 years ago, when humanity first made contact with galactic civilization. But circumstances change, Captain. The Council requested our assistance. Assistance with what? The Krovar Collective. Chun activated the display screen, which showed a 3-dimensional map of the local sector. Red zones indicated areas under Krovar control or influence. Over the past 18 months, they've expanded their operations dramatically. 17 civilized worlds have been raided. Over 3 million beings have been enslaved or killed. Traditional Galactic Council response protocols haven't been effective. Vextai studied the map with growing alarm. The red zones covered nearly a quarter of the sector. But surely the Council fleet follows rules of engagement designed for warfare between civilized species. Chun interrupted. The Council fleet announces their arrival, demands surrender, gives enemies time to comply with demands, and treats prisoners according to established conventions. Of course, Such protocols protect innocent lives and prevent unnecessary suffering. Chun's expression grew cold. Captain, how many innocents do you think died while Krovar raiders were given time to comply with demands? How many civilians were used as human shields because the Council fleet was too civilized to fire on ships containing prisoners? Vextide didn't answer. He had seen the reports from raided worlds. The Krovar Collective showed no mercy to prisoners, no respect for civilian populations, no honor in combat. They were predators in the truest sense. 6 months ago, Chun continued, the Galactic Council approached Earth with a request. They needed a force that could deal with the Krovar problem permanently. Something the raiders wouldn't expect, couldn't adapt to, and couldn't escape from. And you volunteered? Captain, my species has been confined to Earth for almost 50 years. We've watched galactic civilization struggle with threats that we could solve easily. Pirates, raiders, aggressive expansion by militaristic species, these are problems we understand intimately. Chun stood and moved to the display, touching controls that highlighted human fleet movements. We've spent decades preparing for the day we'd be allowed to help. The Krovar crisis simply gave us the opportunity. The screen now showed the positions of human fleets throughout the sector. Vextai counted dozens of ships, all moving in coordinated patterns that gradually surrounded known Krovar strongholds. How many vessels do you have out here? He asked quietly. Sufficient for the mission, Chun replied. Captain, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. What do you know about Earth? Really no, not just the official classifications. Vextai considered carefully. It's classified as a Class 12 death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather, dangerous native life forms. Most species would find it uninhabitable. That's the surface classification, Chun agreed. But it doesn't tell the whole story. Captain, Earth is a world where everything is trying to kill everything else every day for millions of years. Our planet has survived 5 mass extinction events. Our oceans contain predators larger than most spaceships. Our weather patterns include storms that make Krovar plasma cannons look like gentle rain. She moved to another section of the display, showing images of Earth's surface. Vextai saw creatures that defied belief, massive predators with jaws full of teeth, swarms of insects that could strip flesh from bone, plants that could kill with toxins or simple physical trauma. But here's what most galactic civilizations don't understand, Chun continued. Humans didn't just survive on Earth, we conquered it. We hunted the apex predators until they feared us. We tamed the storms by learning to predict and avoid them. We turned the most hostile environment in known space into our home. I begin to understand why the Council restricted your movements, Vextai said softly. Do you? Because I don't think you understand the real reason yet. Xian returned to her seat, her expression becoming more serious. Captain, what would happen if your research ship encountered a pack of Krovar raiders without outside intervention? We would attempt to negotiate. Failing that, we would surrender and hope they would honor prisoner conventions. And if they didn't honor those conventions? Vextai was quiet for a long moment. Many of my crew would die. The survivors would become slaves. Exactly. Because your people, for all their scientific advancement and cultural sophistication, never learned to fight for survival. You never had to. Chun leaned forward. Captain, humans have been fighting. For survival since we first stood upright on Earth. We've spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against enemies who gave no quarter and expected none, but surely civilized warfare has rules. Civilized warfare is a luxury that only works when both sides are civilized, Chun interrupted. The Krovar Collective gave up any claim to civilized treatment when they started enslaving children and torturing prisoners for entertainment. They operate by predator rules, so that's how we'll deal with them. The display screen changed again, showing real-time feeds from across the sector. Human fleets were moving into position around Krovar bases, cutting off escape routes and supply lines. What you witnessed today was just the beginning, Chun explained. Operation Deathworld is designed to eliminate the Krovar threat permanently. No negotiation, no prisoner exchanges, no lengthy trials. We find them, we destroy them, we move on to the next target. Vextai felt a chill of fear and admiration. The Galactic Council authorized this? The Council authorized us to address the Krovar problem using whatever methods we deem appropriate. Chun's smile was cold. They were careful not to ask for specifics. And after the Krovar are eliminated, what happens to your fleets? Do you return to Earth? Chun was quiet for a moment, studying something on her personal display. Captain, we've been monitoring galactic communications since we arrived in this sector. The Krovar aren't the only threat to peaceful civilizations. There are aggressive expansion fleets from the hegemony of Voss, the blood-tide pirates in the Outer Rim, the flesh markets that steal entire populations for slavery. You're planning to deal with all of them? The galaxy is a dangerous place, Captain. Civilized species like your people shouldn't have to live in fear of predators. Humans understand predators. We know how to hunt them. Chin stood again, moving to the window that showed the debris field where the Krovar fleet had died. Your people build beautiful ships, create amazing art, unlock the secrets of the universe. You shouldn't have to waste your time learning to kill things. But you do. It's what we're good at. Chun turned back to him. Captain, I'm going to make you an offer. Your research vessel has substantial sensor capabilities and detailed star charts of this region. We could use that data to complete our mission more efficiently. In exchange, we'll provide you with safe passage to any destination in Council space, plus a complete tactic. The Krovar stronghold at Kara 7 was a monument to brutality and greed. Built into the hollow shell of a dead moon, the massive fortress housed over 50,000 raiders, their families, and an unknown number of slaves taken from dozens of worlds. Its weaponry could destroy entire fleets. Its shields had withstood the combined assault of 3 Council task forces. Captain Vextai stood on the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching as the human fleet approached the fortress with methodical precision. 2 days had passed since their first encounter, and he had spent that time learning things about humanity that no other alien had ever been permitted to see. Captain Chun, he said quietly, your fleet is approaching within the fortress's maximum weapons range. Shouldn't you be concerned about their defensive capabilities? Chun stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back, completely calm. Captain, what do you know about persistence hunting? I'm not familiar with the term. It's an ancient human hunting technique. Instead of using strength or speed to catch prey, the hunters would simply follow their target for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never giving up. Eventually, the prey would exhaust itself and could be taken easily. She gestured toward the tactical display. We've been persistence hunting the Krovar for 6 months. Vextai studied the display more carefully. The human fleet wasn't just approaching the fortress, they had completely surrounded the system. Every jump point, every asteroid field that could hide fleeing ships, every possible escape route was blocked by human vessels. You've isolated them completely. More than that. For the past week, we've been systematically destroying their supply convoys, communication relays, and outlying bases. The Krovar in that fortress haven't received supplies or reinforcements in 5 days. They don't even know what's happening in the rest of their territory? The fortress began to show signs of activity. Weapon ports opened like angry eyes. Shield generators created a glowing envelope around the massive structure. Incoming transmission from the fortress, reported the communications officer. Put it on screen. Chun ordered. The image that appeared was disturbing even by galactic standards. Warlord Thaxmore of the Krovar Collective was a creature of pure malevolence 3 meters tall, covered in scars and ritual tattoos with cybernetic implants that replaced body parts lost in countless battles. His species had evolved from apex predators, and everything about him radiated lethal violence. Unknown human vessels, he snarled. You have entered sovereign Krovar territory. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Chun stepped forward, her expression showing no emotion whatsoever. Warlord Thaxmore, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately, and we will consider allowing your non-combatants to survive. The warlord's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. Stupid human. This fortress has withstood attacks by entire council fleets. Your 12 ships are nothing. Warlord, Chun replied calmly, you're looking at old intelligence. Check your scanners again. Thaxmore's expression changed as he studied readings from his own sensors. The color drained from his scaled face. Impossible, he whispered. Captain Vextai looked at the tactical display and understood the warlord's shock. What had appeared to be 12 ships was actually a cloaked fleet of over 60 vessels. As he watched, more ships appeared from behind asteroids, dropped their stealth fields, and emerged from hyperspace. How? Vextai breathed. Deception, Chun replied simply. We wanted the Krovar to think they were only facing a small force. We needed them to commit to defending this position instead of scattering across the sector. The communication channel was still open. Warlord Thaxmore had recovered his composure, but his voice carried an undertone of desperation. Even 60 ships cannot breach our defenses. This fortress has shield generators powered by a stellar tap. Our weapons can destroy entire worlds. Warlord, Chun said, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We don't attack fortresses. We bypass them, starve them, or make them irrelevant. But when we absolutely have to take a fortified position, we don't play by civilized rules. She turned to her weapons officer. Commander Rodriguez, deploy the Stellar Busters. Vextai had never heard that term before, but something about it made his blood freeze. Captain Chun, what are Stellar Busters? Weapons designed specifically for destroying fortifications like this one. She activated a display that showed technical specifications for devices that defied his understanding of physics. Captain, the Krovar built their fortress inside a dead moon for protection, but that also means they're trapped inside a gravitationally stable mass. On the main screen, 6 human vessels moved into formation around the moon. They were unlike anything Vextai had seen before long. Narrow ships that looked more like projectiles than spacecraft. Stellar tap reactors require precise gravitational balance to function safely, Chun continued. If that balance is disturbed, the first stellar buster fired. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it projected some kind of gravitational distortion that struck the moon's surface like an invisible hammer. The entire structure shuddered. You're destabilizing the moon itself, Vextai said in horror. Not destabilizing, redirecting. Chun's voice remained perfectly calm. We're changing its orbital mechanics. In approximately 18 minutes, this moon will begin a decaying orbit toward the system's star. On the communication channel, alarms were blaring throughout the Krovar fortress. Warlord Thaxmore was shouting orders in his native language, but his subordinates were reporting cascading system failures. This is impossible, he roared. No weapon can move an entire moon. Warlord, Chun replied, you've never fought humans before. We don't just defeat our enemies, we make them irrelevant. The second and third stellar busters fired in sequence. The moon's orbit shifted noticeably, and the fortress's shields began to fluctuate as their power source destabilized. Captain Chun, Vextai said urgently, there are thousands of beings on that fortress. Slaves, captured civilians, even Krovar non-combatants. I know. Chun's expression softened slightly. Mr. Rodriguez, begin transport operations. Across the human fleet, dozens of ships moved closer to the fortress. They weren't attacking, they were deploying boarding parties and rescue teams. But these weren't the careful, methodical operations that civilized forces would conduct. They were fast, brutal, and overwhelmingly effective. How are they getting through the fortress defenses? Vextai asked. Captain, while we were moving the moon, we were also doing something else. Chun highlighted dozens of points on the fortress's surface. For the past 6 months, we've been placing microscopic infiltration devices on every supply shipment, every captured vessel, every piece of equipment that entered this fortress. We know the location of every slave, every weapon emplacement, every critical system. The human boarding parties move through the fortress like a virus through a body. They bypassed defended positions, rescued civilians from slave quarters, and neutralized weapon systems with surgical precision. The Krovar defenders, who had expected a frontal assault, found themselves fighting enemies who already knew the layout of their own base better than they did. Impossible! Thaxmore screamed. How do they know our security codes? How do they know our internal layouts? Because we've been inside your fortress for months, Chun replied. Every conversation, every plan, every defensive preparation, we've been listening. The fourth stellar buster fired, and the moon's descent toward the star became irreversible. The fortress's power systems began failing as their stellar tap reactor could no longer maintain stable operation. Warlord Thaxmore, Chun announced. You now have exactly 43 minutes before this moon crosses the stellar event horizon. I suggest you order your remaining forces to surrender while our rescue teams can still extract them safely. The communication channel filled with panicked voices as Krovar commanders realized their situation was hopeless. Their mighty fortress, their technological advantages, their superior numbers, none of it mattered when facing an enemy who had been planning this operation for months and had the patience to execute it perfectly. Human, Thaxmore snarled. If we die here, the rest of the collective will hunt your people across the galaxy. They will make humanity suffer for this insult. Chun's smile was cold as winter on Earth. Warlord, you still don't understand. There is no rest of the collective. While we were talking to you, 16 other human fleets have been eliminating every Krovar base, every supply depot, every ship in your territory. Your entire civilization is being dismantled as we speak. She activated a galaxy-wide tactical display that showed the true scope of the human operation. Red zones that had indicated Krovar territory were flickering out one by one as human forces completed their missions. This was never about capturing your fortress, Chun explained. This was about eliminating the Krovar collective as a threat to civilized space, permanently. Captain Vextai watched the display with growing awe and terror. In 6 months of careful preparation, humanity had managed to identify, isolate, and simultaneously attack every significant Krovar asset in the sector. It wasn't just military victory, it was the complete eradication of an entire pirate civilization. Captain Chun, he said quietly, this